when renowned astrophysicist Dr. Elena Vasquez rose from her seat at Elon Musk's latest grand unveiling and proclaimed that his audacious scheme to harness black hole energy for interstellar travel shattered every known law of physics, the packed auditorium at Caltech braced for a storm. Musk, after all, had a reputation for bristling at skeptics, his sharp tongue a weapon honed by years of defying doubters. But instead of firing back, he flashed a grin that sliced through the tension like a blade and lobbed an offer that left the room stunned. Join me at SpaceX and prove it's a bust, or make it real. Now, Dr. Vasquez stands at a precipice, clinging to the safe orbit of academia, where her peers nod in unison to her theorems, or plunging into the wild unknown of SpaceX to dismantle Musk's vision from within. But what if she's wrong? And what if Musk's gamble conceals a deeper intent? One that could redefine humanity's reach into the stars. This is the tale of how the boldest leaps sometimes ignite at the edge of impossibility, where doubt and daring clash in a cosmic dance. The auditorium hummed with restless energy, a sea of faces, scientists in rumpled blazers, students clutching laptops, tech journalists poised with recorders, craning toward the stage where a massive screen pulsed with the SpaceX logo and the cryptic tagline, Project Singularity, powering the stars. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat rigid in the third row, her arms crossed so tight her knuckles whitened, her dark hair scraped into a bun as severe as the tension knotting her shoulders. At 42, she'd carved her name into the annals of astrophysics. 2 decades spent charting the universe's darkest corners. Black holes with their insatiable maws, neutron stars pulsing like cosmic lighthouses, voids where light bent and died. Her NASA badge, pinned to her navy blazer, caught the overhead lights, a quiet badge of her authority earned through sleepless nights and equations that danced in her dreams. She'd seen Musk pull rabbits from hats before, rockets landing with balletic grace, a cherry-red Tesla flung into orbit on a whim. But this was no stunt. This was a gauntlet thrown at the laws she'd spent her life upholding. Her foot tapped a staccato rhythm against the polished floor, a metronome counting down her patience as whispers rippled through the rows behind her. "He's late again," a grad student muttered, his voice tinged with awe rather than irritation. "Always is," another replied, half laughing. Elena flicked her eyes to her watch. 10 minutes past the scheduled start, the hands ticking with a precision that mocked the chaos she sensed brewing. She'd only come because her department chair at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory had leaned across his cluttered desk 2 days prior, his tone firm. "Elena, we need eyes on this. Musk's cooking something big, too big to ignore." Privately, she'd scoffed, her lips curling as she'd skimmed the invite. Black hole energy for interstellar propulsion. It was the kind of notion that belonged in a dog-eared paperback on her childhood shelf, not a lab with real stakes. Yet here she was, surrounded by a crowd buzzing like bees around a hive, their excitement a low hum that grated against her skepticism. The lights dimmed abruptly, plunging the room into a hush as a drumbeat thumped through the speakers. Dramatic, insistent, the kind of flourish that made Elena roll her eyes so hard she felt it in her skull. She sank lower in her seat, the cushioned back creaking faintly under her weight, her fingers tightening around the edge of her notepad. Then Elon Musk strode onto the stage, his black jacket slung open over a plain tee, his stride loose but purposeful, like a man who owned the room and knew it. The crowd erupted, applause crashing over her like a tidal wave, hands clapping in a frenzy that drowned out her thoughts. She kept hers still, folded in her lap, her gaze locked on him, unblinking, assessing, a predator sizing up prey. "Thanks for showing up," Musk said, his voice slicing through the noise, amplified by the mic clipped to his collar, its echo bouncing off the high ceiling. "Today's not about tinkering at the edges. It's about pushing past what we think we know. Project Singularity isn't a step forward, it's a leap into the void." The screen flared to life behind him, unveiling a breathtaking animation. A sleek, skeletal structure orbiting a swirling black hole, its event horizon a shimmering disk of warped light. Tendrils of energy twisted inward, devoured by the singularity, then surged outward into a glowing core that pulsed like a heartbeat. "For years, we've dreamed of interstellar travel," he continued, pacing the stage with a restless energy, his hands slashing the air to punctuate his words. "But fuel's the chokehold. Chemical rockets burn out too fast, nuclear fission's too clunky, even fusion's too slow for the distances we're chasing. So we're tapping the ultimate power source, black holes." Gasps rippled through the auditorium, a collective intake of breath that stirred the air. Elena straightened, her foot stilling mid-tap, her pulse kicking up despite the iron grip she kept on her composure. The animation zoomed closer, a platform hovering just beyond the event horizon, siphoning shimmering threads of Hawking radiation and gravitational waves, converting them into a propulsion beam that hurled a ship toward a distant starfield. By harnessing the energy at the edge of a singularity, Musk said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial cadence, we can generate near-infinite power, clean, compact, enough to cross galaxies in decades, not centuries. First test platform slated for lunar orbit in 3 years. Step 1 to the stars. The crowd leaned forward, mesmerized, their faces lit by the screen's glow, but Elena's mind spun in the opposite direction. Equations cascading like a waterfall, physics buckling under the weight of his claims. Impossible, she thought, the word a hammer striking steel. Utterly, fundamentally impossible. She'd studied black holes since her grad school days at MIT, her dissertation on event horizon dynamics still a cornerstone at JPL, cited in every major paper on gravitational collapse. Hawking radiation? It trickled out in picowatts, faint whispers, not the roaring gigawatts Musk was banking on. Materials to withstand tidal shear near a singularity? They didn't exist, couldn't exist under current science. And the energy transfer he was touting? It laughed in the face of thermodynamics, entropy snarling at the edges of his fantasy. He rambled on, lunar staging bases, radiation collectors, a timeline so tight it bordered on delirium, and her skepticism hardened into a blade, sharp and cold. She scribbled notes on her pad, the pens scratch a counterpoint to his voice. Radiation yield insufficient. Tidal forces catastrophic. Energy conversion unfeasible. Each line fueled her resolve, a wall of reason against his fevered pitch. When he finally paused, grinning wide enough to show teeth, and said, "Questions?" her hand shot up, almost before her brain caught up. A staffer with a mic hesitated, his eyes darting to her NASA badge, then to Musk, who pointed straight at her with a flick of his wrist. "You front row, NASA. Go!" She rose, the mic cool and slick in her grip, her blazer rustling as she squared her shoulders. The room's eyes bore into her, a weight she felt but refused to buckle under. "Dr. Elena Vasquez, Astrophysics, NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the hum like a laser. "I've spent 20 years modeling black hole physics, radiation outputs, accretion disks, tidal forces across event horizons." Musk nodded, his face unreadable but his eyes locked on hers, a spark of interest flickering there. "What you're proposing," she continued, her tone clipped, precise, each word a brick in her argument, breaks fundamental laws. Hawking radiation's yield is negligible. Picowatts per square meter, not the gigawatts you'd need for propulsion. The materials to withstand tidal shear near a singularity don't exist. Tensile strength would collapse under gravitational gradients. And your energy transfer system? It's thermodynamically unfeasible. Entropy alone would shred it. This isn't just ambitious, it's impossible. The auditorium went still, a collective inhale sucking the oxygen from the space. Camera flashes popped like gunfire, lenses swiveling between her and Musk, capturing the moment a NASA heavyweight called his bluff. She braced for the counterpunch, some glib remark about naysayers or a pivot to thinking bigger than the textbooks. Instead, he tilted his head, a slow smile spreading across his face, sharp and bright as a supernova, and leaned into his mic. "You're saying it's a non-starter?" "Yes," she replied, firm, unflinching, her voice a steel rod in the silence. "Physically impossible with current science, and likely any science we'll have in 3 years." The quiet stretched, taut as a bowstring, every breath in the room held hostage. Then he laughed, a short, sharp bark that jolted the crowd, ricocheting off the walls. "Love it," he said, stepping forward, his boots scuffing the stage. "Dr. Vasquez, right? Perfect. Come work at SpaceX. Prove me wrong or build it with me." Murmurs erupted, a tidal wave of shock crashing through the seats, voices overlapping in a chaotic hum. Elena blinked, the mic slipping in her sweaty palm, her mind scrambling to process the words. "Excuse me," she managed, her voice thinner than she'd intended, a crack in her armor she hated hearing. "You heard me," Musk said, casual as if he'd offered her a seat at lunch, his grin unwavering. "Join the Singularity team. If it's bunk, you'll shred it faster than anyone. Save us the trouble. If it's not, well, we'll rewrite the books together. What do you say?" The crowd held its breath, cameras flashing in a frenzy, her NASA badge suddenly a beacon under the lights. Her heart hammered, a wild drumbeat against her ribs, and she swallowed hard, forcing her voice back to steel. "I'll consider it," she said, each syllable measured, deliberate. "You've got my contact at JPL." She handed the mic back to the staffer, her fingers trembling faintly as she sank into her seat, the room exploding into chatter around her. The Q&A stumbled forward, reporters firing questions, Musk deflecting with quips. But she barely registered it, her ears ringing with the echo of his offer. Her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket, texts from colleagues, a missed call from her chair, a notification she didn't dare check yet. When the lights rose and the crowd began to filter out, she slipped through a side door, dodging a knot of journalists shouting her name, their mics thrust like spears. Outside, the Caltech parking lot stretched dark and quiet, the night air cool against her flushed skin, stars glinting faintly above the campus lights. She leaned against her car, a battered Prius that had carried her through a decade of commutes, and pulled her phone. SpaceX HR. Project Singularity offer. Preliminary terms. Her keys bit into her palm as she stared at the screen, the words blurring into a question she couldn't answer. Join Musk? To debunk his madness, or to chase a ghost she'd spent her career proving couldn't exist. NASA was her anchor. Equations that balanced, peers who spoke her language, a universe that obeyed its own rules. SpaceX was a maelstrom, chaos, bravado, a man who grinned at the impossible like it was a dare. What she didn't know yet, as she stood there under the indifferent stars, was that Musk's smile hid a secret, one that would drag her past the event horizon of her own certainty, into a void where doubt might spark something greater than she'd ever imagined. The Caltech parking lot stretched dark and silent around Dr. Elena Vasquez as she leaned against her Prius, the night air sharp with the tang of eucalyptus and exhaust, her phone glowing with the SpaceX email. Project Singularity offer. Preliminary terms. Her breath fogged faintly in the cool November chill, her fingers hovering over the screen, the weight of Musk's words, "Prove me wrong, or build it with me," looping in her mind like a rogue orbit. She'd spent 20 years at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, her life a constellation of equations and certainties, her office a fortress of data where black holes bowed to her models. Now, Musk's grin, that reckless spark in his eyes, threatened to yank her from that gravity well into a freefall she couldn't predict. Her phone buzzed again, her sister, Sophia, this time, and she swiped it open, needing an anchor. "Elena, what the hell?" Sophia's voice burst through, sharp and familiar, the static of a late-night call crackling between them. "You're all over X," NASA doc smacks down Musk, SpaceX snags skeptic. "Did you really call him out in front of everyone?" Elena sighed, pinching the bridge of her nose, the asphalt cold under her boots. "I didn't smack him down, Soph. I stated facts. His black hole energy idea is nonsense. Physics doesn't bend for bravado." Sophia laughed, a bright, jagged sound that cut through the fog in Elena's head. "And then he offered you a job? That's peak Musk, turning a fight into a handshake. You're not actually thinking about it, are you?" Elena glanced at the email again, the screen's light casting shadows across her knuckles. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice quieter, fraying at the edges. "It's insane. Hawking radiation's a whisper, not a power grid." But he looked at me like he knew something I didn't. Sophia snorted, the sound muffled as if she'd flopped onto her couch in Pasadena, miles away but close enough to feel. "He's a showman. El probably wants you for the optics. NASA big shot joins the dream team. Stick with JPL. Your tenure's locked, your work's solid. Why risk it? Why risk it?" The question gnawed at her as she drove home, the Prius's hum a low counterpoint to the chaos in her chest. Her apartment in Altadena waited, a small second-floor unit tucked among pines, its windows dark as she climbed the creaking stairs. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and old books, her desk a battlefield of papers. Charts of black hole spin rates, simulations of gravitational lensing, a framed photo of her and Sophia at her PhD graduation, both grinning under a shower of confetti. She dropped her keys on the counter, the clink loud in the stillness, and sank into her chair, the SpaceX email glaring from her laptop now, its terms stark. 1-year contract, $300,000, lead physicist, Project Singularity. Double her NASA salary. A guaranteed return to JPL if it flopped. A chance to rip Musk's fantasy apart, or to build something impossible. Sleep eluded her that night, the ceiling a blank canvas for her racing thoughts. She saw Musk's platform in her mind's eye, sleek, orbiting a singularity, its tendrils drinking energy from the void. She saw her own equations too, the ones that proved it couldn't work. Radiation flux too low, tidal forces too brutal, entropy a wall no tech could breach. Yet his grin lingered, a taunt, a dare, and by 3 a.m., she was at her desk again, a notebook open, pen scratching furious lines, calculations, objections, a list of why she'd say no. But then, almost against her will, a second column emerged. What if? What if they boosted radiation capture with quantum arrays? What if they engineered alloys beyond current limits? What if Musk wasn't bluffing? Morning sunlight slanted through her blinds, painting gold across the cluttered desk, when her phone rang. Dr. James Carter, her JPL chair, his voice gravelly with early hours. "Elena, you've got my inbox in a frenzy," he said, no preamble. "Musk called me at dawn, says he's poaching you. What's this about?" She rubbed her eyes, coffee cooling beside her. "He pitched a black hole energy project last night, Singularity. I told him it's impossible. He offered me a job to prove it." Carter grunted, a sound caught between amusement and exasperation. "And you're considering it?" "I shouldn't be," she said, her voice tight. "It's a circus, unrealistic timelines, untested physics." But he's persistent. Carter paused, the silence heavy, then softened. "You're the best we've got, Elena. Your work on Event Horizons keeps us ahead of ESA, CNSA, everyone. NASA's safe, your grants are funded, your team's tight. SpaceX is a gamble, and Musk's a wild card. But," he trailed off, and she caught the shift, the unspoken nudge. "But what?" she pressed. "If you go, you'd be our eyes inside," he said, low, conspiratorial. "See what he's really up to, bring it back. We'd welcome you either way." She leaned back, the chair creaking, Carter's words a lifeline and a tether. Stay safe or spy. Neither felt right, but both kept her tethered to the familiar. By noon, her apartment buzzed with tension as Sophia barged in, unannounced, a whirlwind of curly hair and takeout bags. "Figured you'd be brooding," she said, dropping Thai food on the counter, her brown eyes sharp with sisterly scrutiny. "Spill it, what's the holdup?" Elena pushed the laptop aside, the SpaceX email still open, and grabbed a carton of Pad CEW, the steam warm against her face. "It's not just the job," she said, fork-stabbing noodles. "It's him, Musk. He didn't flinch when I tore into his plan. He smiled like he's got an ace up his sleeve." Sophia plopped onto the couch, kicking off her sneakers, her voice dry. "He's a billionaire, El. He's got a whole deck up there. Doesn't mean his physics works." Elena chewed slowly, the flavors sharp but distant, her mind replaying the auditorium. Camera flashes, Musk's laugh, the crowd's gasp. "I've spent my career proving what's real," she said, soft, almost to herself. "Black holes don't give up energy like that, they devour it. But what if I'm missing something? What if he's onto a crack I haven't seen?" Sophia frowned, leaning forward, elbows on her knees. "You're not missing anything. You're the expert. He's the one with the crazy ideas. Don't let him rattle you." Elena nodded, but the doubt lingered, a splinter under her skin, and Sophia saw it, her tone softening. "Look, if you're this torn, call him. Ask what he's really after. Then decide." The idea stuck, a lifeline through the fog, and after Sophia left, leaving half the takeout and a hug that lingered, Elena paced the apartment, her boots scuffing the hardwood. She dialed SpaceX HR, her pulse a drumbeat, and a crisp voice answered. "Mr. Musk's expecting your call, patching you through." Seconds later, his voice crackled over the line, casual but edged with that same spark. "Dr. Vasquez, thought I'd hear from you. What's on your mind?" She stood straighter, the phone cool against her ear. "Why me?" she asked, blunt. "I trashed your project, called it impossible. Why not hire someone who buys the dream?" He chuckled, low and warm, the sound disarming despite her guard. "Because you don't buy it, that's the point. I've got dreamers, dozens of them, sketching stars. I need someone who'll kick the tires, break it if it's weak. You're not afraid to say no, and you've got the chops to back it up." She frowned, pacing faster, the pine scent of her apartment grounding her. "And if it's impossible? If I prove it's a waste? Then we pivot," he said, unfazed. "Failure's data. I'd rather know fast. But if there's a chance, even a sliver, you're the one to find it. So yes or no?" She stopped, the question a weight on her chest, her reflection staring back from the window. Tired eyes, NASA badge still pinned to her blazer. "I need time," she said, firm, buying seconds she didn't have. 48 hours, I'll call." He agreed, the line clicking dead, and she sank onto the couch, the takeout cold now, her notebook open beside her, 2 columns glaring. Why not and what if? The pull of the unknown tugged harder, a gravitational force she couldn't name, and as dusk painted the sky purple beyond her pines, She wondered if Musk's secret wasn't just in his tech, but in the doubt he'd planted, a seed she couldn't uproot. Dusk bled into night over Altadena, the sky a bruised purple beyond Elena Vasquez's pine-framed windows, the SpaceX email still glaring from her laptop like a dare etched in light. The apartment hummed with quiet, her boots scuffing the hardwood, the faint tick of a wall clock. The Thai takeout Sophia had left now a cold, congealed heap on the counter. Musk's voice echoed in her skull. Prove me wrong, or build it with me. A taunt that wouldn't fade, its pull tightening like a gravitational well she couldn't escape. She'd asked for 48 hours, a lifeline to wrestle her doubt, but the clock was already slicing through them. Each tick a reminder of the choice looming. NASA's steady orbit or SpaceX's wild spiral into the void. She paced, her shadow stretching long across the room, her notebook open on the couch, 2 columns staring back. Why not, dense with equations and objections, and what if, sparse but alive with questions that gnawed at her certainty. Her NASA badge lay beside it, its silver edges catching the lamplight, a tether to 20 years of rigor. Papers on black hole spin, missions plotting Mars rovers, a life where the universe bent to her rules. SpaceX was chaos, Musk's grin, his reckless timelines, a project that mocked her life's work. Yet the what-if column pulsed, a rogue signal. What if he's cracked something I haven't seen? What if I've calcified, too safe in my own orbit? She rubbed her temples, the ache sharp, and sank into the chair, the leather creaking under her weight. Her phone buzzed, shattering the stillness. Dr. Priya Patel, her closest ally at JPL, her voice crackling with urgency. Elena, you okay? Carter's buzzing about your Musk showdown. Says he's worried you're jumping ship. Elena leaned back, the ceiling a blank slate for her exhaustion. I'm fine, Priya. Just processing. He offered me a job, Singularity, his black hole energy thing. I told him it's impossible. Priya laughed, short and dry, the sound of someone who'd seen Elena dismantle bad ideas before. And he wants you anyway? Classic Musk, loves a fight. You're not seriously considering it, right? Elena's eyes flicked to the notebook, the what-if column glinting in her mind. I shouldn't be, she said, her voice fraying. It's a fantasy. Hawking radiation's too weak. Tidal shear's a shredder. Thermodynamics says no. But he didn't blink, Priya. He looked at me like he's got a card I don't. Priya paused, the silence thick, then softened. You're the sharpest mind I know, Elle. Your models keep us ahead of the curve. JPL's your home. Your tenure's ironclad. Your team's counting on you. SpaceX is a circus. Fun to watch, hell to join. What's pulling you? The question hung, heavy as a planet, and Elena traced the badge with her finger, its cool metal grounding her. I don't know, she admitted, soft, almost a whisper. Maybe it's the chance to be wrong, to see if there's a gap in what I think I know. Or maybe it's just him, Musk. He's not scared of the impossible. Priya snorted, but her tone gentled. He's not scared of anything. Doesn't mean he's right. Sleep on it, okay? We've got that Europa probe sim tomorrow. Need your head in the game. Elena nodded, though Priya couldn't see, and the call ended, leaving her alone with the ticking clock and the weight of her own words. Sleep came in fits, a restless tangle of dreams, black holes swirling, their edges bleeding light, Musk's grin looming like a Cheshire cat, her equations dissolving into static. She woke at dawn, the sky gray beyond her blinds, her throat dry as she stumbled to the kitchen. Coffee brewed slow, its bitter scent filling the air, and she stood over the sink, mug warm in her hands, staring at the pines swaying in the breeze. The Europa sim loomed, her team's months-long project, mapping subsurface oceans, a mission she'd fought for. JPL was her rhythm, meetings, data, a quiet hum of progress. SpaceX was a drumbeat, wild, loud, uncharted. She sipped, the burn grounding her, and her phone pinged. SpaceX HR. Follow-up, Project Singularity. A nudge, a pull, Musk's dare in black and white. By mid-morning, she was at JPL, the sprawling campus a maze of white buildings and palm trees, the air thick with jet fuel and ambition. Her office smelled of paper and solder, a chaos of charts pinned to the walls, black hole accretion disks, gravitational wave signatures, a photo of her first telescope, a rickety thing she'd built at 16. Priya met her at the door, her dark eyes sharp behind glasses, a tablet glowing with sim data. You look like hell, she said, half smiling, handing Elena a coffee. Musk keeping you up? Elena took it, the warmth seeping into her palms. Something like that. Let's get to the sim, need to focus. The control room buzzed, screens alive with Europa's icy crust, her team hunched over consoles. young engineers she'd mentored, their chatter a steady hum. She slipped into her role, voice crisp as she called out adjustments. Recalibrate the thermal sensors, ice densities off by 0.2. The sim ran smooth, data streaming like a river, and for 3 hours she was Dr. Vasquez again, steady, certain, the universe bending to her command. But as the screens dimmed, Priya nudged her elbow, nodding to a corner. "Carter's here, wants a word." Dr. James Carter stood by the window, his gray hair mussed, his tie loose, the lines on his face deeper than usual. "Elena," he said, his voice low, gruff, as they stepped into the hall. "Musk's offer. Where's your head?" She leaned against the wall, the concrete cool through her blazer. "Still spinning," she said, honest. "It's a year, $300K, back to JPL if it flops. He wants me to break it, or build it." Carter's eyes narrowed, assessing. "And you're tempted?" It wasn't a question. She nodded, slow, the admission heavy. "Maybe. Not for the money, for the chance he's not bluffing. But it's a risk, leaving this." She gestured to the control room, the hum of her life. Carter rubbed his jaw, his gaze drifting to the campus beyond. Rockets on pads, a legacy in steel. "You're my best, Elena. Europa, the Mars arrays, it's all you. But I meant what I said. If you go, you're our eyes. Musk's got resources we can't touch, secrets, too. Bring him back and you're gold here." He paused, softer now. "Just don't lose yourself in his orbit. He's a black hole of his own." She smirked, faint, but the warning stuck, a pebble in her shoe as she walked back to her office, the sim's success a quiet hum against the roar of her doubt. Afternoon faded to evening, the sun dipping low, casting gold across her desk as she sat with the SpaceX contract. Terms stark, a pen poised above it. Her phone buzzed, Sophia again, her voice bright through the speaker. "El, you decide yet? X is still wild. Half think you're a hero, half think you're nuts." Elena laughed, rough, the sound scraping her throat. "I'm leaning no, JPL's my ground. But Musk's got this pull. Like he knows something." Sophia groaned, dramatic. "He's a magician, not a physicist, don't fall for the trick. Call him, say no, sleep easy." The call ended, but Sophia's words didn't settle her. They prodded, a spark against the fuse of her resolve. She dialed Musk's line, her pulse a drumbeat, and his voice answered, casual, alive. "Dr. Vasquez, clock's ticking. Yes or no?" She stood, pacing, the badge heavy on her blazer. "I'm leaning no," she said, firm. "Your project's a fantasy. Physics doesn't bend that far. But tell me straight, why this? Why black holes?" He paused, the silence electric, then chuckled. "Because they're the edge, Elena, the horizon we've never crossed. I think there's power there we haven't tapped. You're the one who can find it, or prove I'm chasing shadows. Last chance, join me." Her breath caught, his words a hook in her chest, and she stopped, the pen trembling in her grip. "I'll call tomorrow," she said, stalling, the line clicking dead. Night pressed against her windows, the pines swaying dark, and she signed the contract, her name a jagged scrawl, then tore it in half, the pieces falling like stars. But the what-if burned brighter, a pull she couldn't shake, and as she stood at the edge of her horizon, she wondered if the void was calling her name. Dawn broke gray over Altadena, a thin fog curling through the pines outside Elena Vasquez's apartment. The torn halves of the SpaceX contract still scattered across her desk like fallen leaves. The night had been a battle, sleep a distant rumor, her mind a storm of Musk's dare and her own doubt. The what-if column in her notebook glowing like a beacon she couldn't ignore. She'd stood at her window until the stars faded, the NASA badge heavy in her hand, its edges biting into her palm as she weighed her life against the pull of the unknown. JPL was her gravity, 20 years of equations, a team she'd forged, missions that mapped the cosmos with her fingerprints. SpaceX was a plunge, a black hole of risk, Musk's grin a singularity she couldn't chart. Yet as the sky lightened, her resolve shifted, a quiet seismic crack, and she taped the contract back together, her signature jagged but whole. She called Musk at 6 a.m., her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest, the phone cool against her ear. "Dr. Vasquez," he answered, his tone bright, awake, as if he'd been waiting. "Verdict." She swallowed, the words a weight lifting. "I'm in 1 year. I'll break it or build it, but I'm not promising miracles." He laughed, sharp and warm, the sound cutting through the fog in her head. "Don't need miracles, just your brain. Welcome to SpaceX. HR's got your start date Monday. Be ready to dive deep." The line clicked dead, and she stood there, the apartment silent save for the drip of her coffee maker. The decision a stone settling in her gut, solid, irreversible. Sophia arrived an hour later, her knock sharp, her curly hair wild as she barged in with a bakery bag and a frown. "You signed it, didn't you?" she said, dropping croissants on the counter, her brown eyes narrowing. Elena nodded, pouring coffee, the steam curling between them. "Yeah, 1 year, back to JPL if it flops. I need to know, Soph, what he's chasing, if there's anything there." Sophia groaned, flopping onto the couch, crumbs scattering as she tore into a pastry. "You're nuts, El. He's got you hooked with that magician act. Ooh, mysterious black hole secrets. You're gonna regret this when you're drowning in his chaos." Elena sat across from her, mug warm in her hands, the bitterness grounding her. "Maybe," she said soft, her gaze drifting to the pines beyond the window. "But I've spent my life proving what's real. Black holes don't give up energy like that. If he's wrong, I'll bury it fast. If he's not," she trailed off, the what if a whisper in her throat, and Sophia sighed softer now. "Just don't lose yourself, okay? You're my big sister. I need you sane." Elena smirked, faint, but the promise stuck, a thread tying her to the ground as she stepped toward the void. Monday morning, she drove to SpaceX's Hawthorne headquarters, the Prius humming through LA traffic, her NASA badge tucked in the glove box, a relic of a life she'd paused. The building loomed, sleek modern, its massive logo glinting in the sun, a stark contrast to JPL's utilitarian sprawl. She adjusted her blazer, her boots clicking on the pavement, and stepped inside, the lobby a whirl of glass and steel, voices echoing off high ceilings. A young woman with neon green hair greeted her, Zara, Musk's assistant, her energy a jolt against Elena's nerves. "Dr. Vasquez, right? We've been waiting. I'm Zara, welcome to the Madhouse." She handed over a badge, its SpaceX logo stark against her name, and grinned. "Security's processing, but you're cleared for most zones. Teams this way." The main floor hit her like a wave. No cubicles, just a sprawling open space. Engineers hunched over desks cluttered with screens and coffee cups. Whiteboards scrawled with equations she recognized, gravitational potentials, radiation flux, mixed with wild sketches of orbiting platforms. Some typed furiously, others sprawled on beanbags. One group argued over a 3D printer spitting out a curved component. "No 9 to 5 here," Zara said, weaving through the chaos, her voice bright. "People work when the ideas hit, crash when they don't. You'll get used to it." Elena nodded, her JPL instincts bristling at the disorder, the air thick with solder and ambition. Zara led her to a glass-walled lab, its door etched with Singularity Team, and pushed it open. Inside, 5 faces turned, young, sharp, a mix of awe and curiosity in their eyes. "Everyone, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez from NASA," Zara announced, then vanished, leaving Elena under their gaze. A lanky man with a scruffy beard stood, extending a hand. "Noah Kim, project lead, physics and propulsion. Huge fan. Your paper on Event Horizon shears a Bible here." She shook his hand, his grip firm, her mind ticking, 30 maybe young for a lead. "Thanks," she said, cautious. "You're running this?" "Since I was 25, Noah grinned, unfazed. "Been with SpaceX 6 years, cut my teeth on Starship." He gestured to the others. "Lila Chen Materials, read your work on titanium alloys for deep space. Ezra Patel, Energy Systems, your radiation models are gold. Maya Ortiz, Structural Design, big on your Tidal Force sims. And Jace Reed, Quantum Tech, calls your dissertation the good stuff." They nodded, a chorus of hellos, their faces lit with a hunger Elena recognized, her own, decades back, before tenure tamed it. She scanned the room, hollow displays flickering with black hole orbits, a table strewn with prototypes, coffee mugs, and half-eaten bagels. "So," she said, voice crisp, stepping to the table. "Show me what you've got. Why Musk thinks this works." Noah tapped a screen, a 3D model spinning into view. A skeletal platform orbiting a singularity, its tendrils siphoning light, energy pulsing through conduits. "This is Singularity Mark I," he said, zooming in. "We're staging it near lunar orbit, small black hole sim, 10 solar masses. Captures Hawking radiation, amplifies it with quantum resonators, channels it into propulsion." Elena frowned, leaning closer, her mind racing. Radiation yield, sheer stress, energy loss. "Hawking radiation's output is picoscale," she said, sharp. "You'd need a capture system orders of magnitude beyond current tech. And materials to survive the gradient? Nothing holds up." Lila jumped in, her voice quick, eager. "That's where I come in. We're developing a carbon nanotube lattice, layered with a new alloy. Tensile strength off the charts." It adapts under stress, not breaks. Ezra nodded, tapping data. And the resonators? We're boosting radiation flux with quantum entanglement arrays. It's theoretical, but the math's holding. She stared at the model, the numbers flickering, wild, untested, yet not outright nonsense. Theoretical's generous, she said, arms crossing. You've got no prototypes, no real data, just pretty pictures and hope. Noah grinned, unfazed. That's why you're here, to kick the tires. Elon said you'd either kill it or make it fly. Before she could reply, the door swung open, and Musk strode in, a mug emblazoned Mars or bust in his hand, his jacket rumpled like he'd slept in it. Dr. Vasquez, he said, nodding, setting the mug down with a clink. Settling in? She straightened, meeting his gaze, its spark undimmed. They're showing me your fantasy, she said, blunt. It's ambitious, I'll give you that. But I'm not sold. He smiled, leaning against the table. Good, I didn't hire you to be sold. Tell me why it's dead, or find the crack that makes it live. Either way, you're the edge we need. He checked his watch, already half out the door. Noah's got your lab, dive in. I'll check back. He left, the room exhaling, and Noah clapped her shoulder, light but firm. Let's get dirty. Real lab's downstairs. The elevator descended, a low hum vibrating through her boots, and when the doors opened, she froze. Below stretched a cavernous space, pressure chambers humming, material testers whirring, a massive hollow tank projecting a black hole's swirl. Welcome to Singularity's heart, Noah said, stepping out, his grin wide. Ready to break something? She followed, her pulse quickening, the chaos of SpaceX sinking in, wild, raw, a leap she'd taken blind. The edge of the horizon loomed, and as she gripped a tablet, the what-if flared bright, pulling her deeper into the void. The underground lab at SpaceX's Hawthorne headquarters thrummed with a restless pulse, pressure chambers hissing, hollow displays casting flickering light across steel walls, the air thick with ozone and ambition. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at its heart, her boots planted on the polished concrete, a tablet glowing in her hands as the Singularity team swarmed around her like planets in orbit. She'd been here 3 weeks, her NASA badge a ghost in her Prius's glove box, her life now a whirlwind of equations and chaos. Musk's dare a constant hum beneath her skin. The platform model spun on the central hollow tank, its skeletal frame orbiting a simulated black hole, tendrils of light bending into its maw, and she stared at it, her hazel eyes sharp, searching for the crack that would either kill it or make it breathe. Noah Kim paced beside her, his scruffy beard catching the tank's glow, his voice a steady cadence over the lab's din. We've got the quantum resonators at 80% efficiency. Sims show a radiation boost from pico to nanoscale. Not gigawatts yet, but it's a start. Elena frowned, tapping the tablet, data streaming, flux rates, entanglement metrics, energy loss curves. Nano's still orders of magnitude short, she said, her tone crisp, cutting through the hum. You'd need a million-fold jump to power a ship. And the tidal's sheer. Your lattice won't hold past $0.10 from the event horizon. Lila Chen leaned in, her quick hands adjusting a 3D printout of the carbon nanotube frame, her voice eager. It's adaptive. Stress tests hit 10 to the power of 9 pascals before deformation. We're close. Close isn't enough, Elena shot back, her pen scratching notes on the tablet. Shear limits, material fatigue, entropy bleed. Close gets you a paper, not a platform. The team bristled, a quiet ripple, but Noah grinned, unfazed, clapping her shoulder. That's why you're here. Find the break point. Let's test it. Real hardware, not Sims. She nodded, reluctant, the what-if tugging despite her skepticism, and followed him to a pressure chamber, its glass walls glinting under harsh lights. Inside sat their first prototype, a meter-long tube, layered with Lila's lattice, wired with Jace's quantum arrays, a fragile hope against the void. The test ran brutal, pressure cranked to simulate tidal forces, radiation pulses mimicking Hawking's faint whisper, sensors screaming data to their screens. Elena stood rigid, arms crossed, her blazer rumpled from sleepless nights, watching as the tube flexed, held, then cracked, a hairline fracture snaking through its core at 60% load. The chamber hissed to a stop, the team exhaling as one, and she stepped closer, peering through the glass. Joints failed first, she said, voice low, analytical. Lattice held, but the connections buckled, stress distributions off. Ezra Patel cursed under his breath, running numbers, while Maya Ortiz sketched fixes on a whiteboard, her marker squeaking. We can reinforce them, she said fast. Redesign the anchor points. Elena shook her head, the crack a mirror to her doubt. It's not just anchors. Your whole model's brittle. You're fighting physics, not bending it. Noah crouched by the chamber, inspecting the wreckage, his grin fading but not gone. It's data, he said, standing, brushing dust off his jeans. Failure's a map, shows us where to dig. She stared at him, the optimism jarring against her JPL-honed precision, but the what-if flickered, a spark she couldn't snuff, and she nodded slow. Fine. Dig deeper, rerun with adjusted joints. I'll recalibrate the sims. Days blurred into nights, the lab a second skin. Coffee burned bitter on her tongue, screens seared her eyes, the team's chatter a lifeline through the grind. She called Sophia late one evening, her voice hoarse over the crackling line, the lab's hum a backdrop. Soph, it's a mess, they're chasing shadows, and I'm knee-deep in it. Sophia laughed, sharp, the sound of her Pasadena apartment creaking through. Told you circus vibes. Come home, JPL's still there. Elena leaned against a workbench, the cold steel biting through her shirt. I can't, she said, soft, the admission raw. There's something here, not the platform, not yet, but a crack I can't unsee. I need to know. Sophia sighed, gentler now. You're stubborn as hell, you know that? Just don't drown, okay? The call ended, and Elena turned back to the hollow tank, the model spinning, its flaws glaring. Yet the what-if burned brighter, a pull she couldn't name. By week's end, they'd rebuilt the prototype, joints reinforced, lattice tweaked, and ran it again. It held to 85% load, cracks forming slower, but still failing, the chambers hiss a funeral bell. Better, she said, circling the wreckage. But not enough. We're missing something fundamental. Radiation captures the bottleneck. That night, alone in the lab, the team gone to crash on cots or grab beers, she sat with the data, her notebook open, columns sprawling. Why not dense with limits, and what if alive with wild leaps? Her phone buzzed, Priya Patel from JPL, her voice a lifeline through the static. Elena, how's the madhouse? Carter's asking, says you're missed. Elena rubbed her eyes, the lab's shadows stretching long. It's chaos, Priya, tests failing, ideas half-baked. But they don't stop, they keep pushing, even when it breaks. Priya paused, then asked soft, and you? You breaking too? Elena laughed, rough, the sound scraping her throat. Maybe. Or maybe I'm bending, just a little. The call faded, and she stood, the hollow tank's glow casting her face in blue, when Musk appeared, silent as a ghost, his Mars or bust mug steaming in his hand. Late night, Dr. Vasquez? He said, leaning against a console, his eyes sharp despite the hour. She straightened, fatigue sharpening her edge. Your project's cracking. Radiation's too weak, materials too frail. We're nowhere near lunar orbit. He sipped, unfazed, his grin faint but piercing. Yet you're still here. Why? She hesitated, the what-if a knot in her chest. Because I need to see the crack, where it leads. If it's nothing, I'll kill it. If it's something. He nodded, slow, setting the mug down with a clink. That's the edge I hired you for. Failure's not the end, it's the start. Dig into the radiation, find the spark. He left, his boots echoing in the quiet, and she turned back to the tank, her mind racing. Hawking radiation, quantum boosts, a crack she couldn't unsee. The next day, she called the team in early, her voice firm, a new fire in her gut. We're rethinking capture. Resonators aren't enough. What if we amplify with a gravitational lens? Use the black hole's own curvature. Jace's eyes lit up, scribbling equations, while Lila frowned, skeptical. That's uncharted. Materials would need to bend light and stress. Then we invent them, Elena said, the words a leap, her JPL caution fraying. They dove in, sims rerunning, prototypes reshaping, the lab a crucible of sweat and sparks. By week's end, they'd built a lens array, crude, fragile, a lattice curved to focus radiation, and tested it. The chamber hummed, pressure climbing, and the array held, radiation spiking to microscale. Still short, but a jump that silenced the room. Holy shit, Noah breathed, staring at the data, and Elena's pulse raced, the crack widening, a glimpse of something real. She stood alone later, the lab dark, the array glinting in its chamber, when her phone buzzed Sophia, her voice tight. You okay? X says SpaceX's singularity's trending. NASA defector cracks the code. You're in deep. Elena smiled, faint, the void closer now. Deeper than I planned, Soph. But I'm not drowning, not yet. The call ended, and she touched the glass, the what if a flame she couldn't quench, pulling her toward an edge she'd never dared to cross. The SpaceX lab pulsed with a restless heartbeat, its underground depths a tangle of shadows and light. Hollow displays flickering, pressure chambers humming, the air sharp with solder and sweat. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the center, her blazer shed on a chair, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, her hazel eyes locked on the hollow tank where the Singularity prototype spun. A skeletal frame orbiting a simulated black hole, its gravitational lens array glinting like a fragile crown. 6 weeks at SpaceX had carved lines into her face, her dark hair loose and wild from sleepless nights. The what if a fire in her gut she couldn't douse. The lens test had cracked the model open. Radiation spiking from pico to microscale, a leap that silenced the team. But it wasn't enough, not yet, and the weight of that gap pressed against her ribs like a tidal force she couldn't escape. Noah Kim hovered beside her, his scruffy beard flecked with coffee stains, his voice cutting through the lab's din microscales a win. Resonators plus the lens are sinking, boosting capture by a factor of 10 cubed. We're on the edge of something. Elena tapped her tablet, data streaming, flux curves, lens distortion, energy bleed, her frown deepening. It's a step, she said, her tone sharp, precise, but we need megascale for propulsion, 10 to the power of 6 at least. And the lattice, stress tests show microfractures at 90% load. We're still breaking. Lila Chen leaned over a workbench, her quick hands tweaking a 3D printed array, her voice bright with defiance. We're pushing the alloy, new mix with graphene threads. It's holding longer, 12 to the power of 9 pascals now. Elena crossed her arms, the tablet cool against her chest, her mind racing. Fracture points, radiation thresholds, entropy's relentless claw. Longer's not enough, she said, her words ablade. Longer gets us a footnote, not a ship. We need a breakthrough, not a bandage. The team bristled, a quiet tension rippling, but Noah grinned, his optimism a shield she couldn't dent. Then let's break it wider, test the new lattice with a full sim. Lunar orbit specs, max load. She nodded, reluctant, the what-if tugging hard, and they prepped the chamber. A meter-long prototype, its lens array curved and gleaming, wired to Jace Reed's quantum tech, a fragile hope against the void's pull. The test roared to life, pressure slamming the chamber, radiation pulsing through the lens, sensors screaming data to their screens. Elena stood rigid, her boots rooted, watching the lattice flex, shimmer, then hold. 90% load, 95%, the numbers climbing as the team held its breath. At 98%, a faint crack snaked through the array's edge, spidering slow, and the chamber hissed to a halt, the prototype intact but scarred. Damn close, Ezra Patel muttered, running diagnostics while Maya Ortiz sketched fixes, her marker flying. Edge stress, lens curvatures off by 0.3 degrees. We can adjust. Elena circled the chamber, peering at the crack, her voice low, analytical. It's not just curvature. Radiation's destabilizing the lattice bonds. We're amplifying, but we're burning it out. Noah crouched by the wreckage, his fingers tracing the fracture, his grin faint but alive. It's a map, shows us the spark. We're closer than yesterday. She stared at him, the relentless hope grating against her JPL precision. But the what-if flared, a current she couldn't ground, and she nodded slow. Rerun with a stabilized lattice, tweak the graphene mix. I'll rework the lens sims, focus the beam tighter. The team dove back in. Nights bleeding into days, coffee a lifeline, the lab a crucible of sparks and strain. Elena's hands shook from fatigue, her eyes burned, but the crack in the model widened, a glimpse of something she couldn't unsee. She called Sophia late one night, the lab dark save for the hollow tank's glow, her voice rough over the line. Soph, I'm in over my head. They're pushing limits I'd have laughed at 6 months ago. Sophia's laugh crackled through, warm but edged with worry, her Pasadena apartment a distant hum. Told you Musk's a vortex. You sound wrecked, Elle. Come crash here, get some air. Elena leaned against the tank, its hum vibrating through her spine. Can't, she said, soft, raw. We're close. Radiation spiking. The lattice is holding longer. I need to see it through. Sophia sighed, gentler now. You're chasing his ghost, not yours. Don't forget who you are, okay? The call faded, and Elena turned back to the tank. The prototype's scars a mirror to her own. The what-if a weight she couldn't shake. By week's end, they'd rebuilt, lattice stabilized, lens refined, and ran it again. The chamber thrummed, pressure climbing, and the array held. 100% load, radiation spiking to milliscale, a jump that froze the room. Holy hell, Jace breathed, his quantum data glowing, and Noah clapped her back hard. Milliscale, that's 10 to the power of 6 territory. You cracked it, Elena. She stared at the numbers, her pulse racing, the spark igniting, real, tangible, a step toward Musk's mad dream. Not cracked, she said, cautious, the JPL in her clawing back. Bent barely. We need sustained output, not a spike. But the team buzzed, energy surging, and she felt it too, a pull she couldn't name, the void whispering back. That night, alone with the data, her phone buzzed, Priya Patel, her JPL lifeline, her voice tight through the static. Elena, X is exploding. Singularity hits milliscale, NASA defector leads charge. Carter's pissed, says you're slipping away. Elena rubbed her face, the lab's shadows long and cold. I'm not defecting, Priya. I'm testing. It's working, sort of. But it's fragile, could collapse any second. Priya paused, then softened. You sound different, lit up, not just tired. Be careful, Elle, don't let it swallow you. The call ended, and Elena stood, the tank's glow painting her in blue, when Musk appeared, his Mars or bust mug steaming, his eyes sharp despite the hour. Milliscale, he said, leaning against a console, his grin wide, piercing. Told you there's a spark, nice work. She straightened, fatigue sharpening her edge. It's a flicker, not a fire. Sustainability's the gap. We're nowhere near a platform. He sipped, unfazed, his gaze locked on hers. Yet you're still digging, why? She hesitated, the what if a knot in her throat. Because the crack's real, I need to know where it goes. But if it's a dead end, I'll call it. He nodded, slow, setting the mug down with a clink. That's the edge I need. Push the lens, sustain the spark. I'll back you. He left, his boots echoing, and she turned back to the tank, her mind racing. Radiation thresholds, lattice bonds, a spark she couldn't quench. The next morning, she rallied the team, her voice firm, a new fire in her gut. We're stabilizing output. Lens focus is key. What if we layer the array, cascade the amplification? Jace's eyes lit up, scribbling, while Lila frowned, skeptical. Layering's untested. Materials would need to sync across phases. Then we test it, Elena said, the words a leap, her caution fraying. They dove in, sims rerunning, prototypes reshaping, the lab a storm of sparks and strain. By week's end, they'd built a layered array, complex, fragile, a lattice of lenses, and tested it. The chamber roared, pressure slamming, and the array held. Milliscale sustained for 3 minutes, a hum that silenced the room. It's working, Noah whispered, and Elena's chest tightened, the spark aflame now, the void's edge closer than ever. She stood alone later, the lab dark, the array glinting, when her phone buzzed, Sophia, her voice strained. Elle, you're trending again. Singularity's alive, Vasquez at helm. You okay? Elena smiled, faint, the weight settling. Better than okay, Soph, I'm bending it. But it's heavy. The call ended, and she touched the glass, the what if a fire she couldn't douse, pulling her deeper into a crack she'd never meant to chase. The SpaceX lab thrummed with a fevered pulse, its underground depths a crucible of light and shadow. Hollow displays casting jagged glows, pressure chambers roaring, the air thick with metal and desperation. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at its core, her boots scuffed, her dark hair tangled from nights without rest, her hazel eyes burning as she watched the Singularity prototype spin in the hollow tank. A skeletal frame orbiting a simulated black hole, its layered lens array shimmering like a fragile galaxy. 9 weeks at SpaceX had etched her bones with fatigue, her life a storm of breakthroughs and breakdowns. The what if a flame in her chest she couldn't quench. The latest test, milliscale radiation sustained for 3 minutes, had lit the team ablaze, a spark that whispered of Musk's mad dream. But the gap to megascale loomed, a void she couldn't bridge, and the weight of it pressed her ribs like a collapsing star. Noah Kim hovered at her side, his scruffy beard dusted with solder, his voice a steady thread through the lab's chaos. 3 minutes at milliscale. Lenses are sinking, lattice holding at 10 to the power of 10 pascals. We're knocking on the door, Elena. She tapped her tablet, data streaming, output curves, lens harmonics, fracture thresholds, her frown carving deeper lines. Knocking's not in, she said, her tone sharp, unyielding. We need hours, not minutes, megascale, not milli. The lattice is fraying, micro cracks at sustained load. We're still short. Lila Chen leaned over a workbench, her hands tweaking a graphene-threaded array, her voice defiant. We've pushed the mix, new bonding agent, 12 to the power of 10 pascals now. It's tougher than anything JPL's got. Elena's eyes flicked to the hollow tank, the numbers glaring, radiation spikes, stress limits, entropy's claw. Tougher's not enough, she snapped, her words a whip. Tougher buys us time, not a ship. We need a leap, capture's still the chokehold. The team tensed, a quiet ripple, but Noah grinned, his optimism a spark she couldn't smother. Then let's leap. Test the full array, lunar specs, max duration. Break it or make it. She nodded, the what-if surging, a current she couldn't ground, and they prepped the chamber. A 2-meter prototype, its lenses layered and gleaming, wired to Jace's quantum tech, a fragile hope against the void's pull. The test roared alive, pressure slamming, radiation pulsing through the lenses, sensors screaming to their screens. Elena stood rooted, her breath shallow, watching the array flex, shimmer, then hold. Milliscale climbing, 5 minutes, 10, the room silent save for the chamber's hum. At 15 minutes, a faint tremor shook the lattice, cracks spidering slow, and the output spiked, megascale, a flash that froze her heart. Mega, 10 to the power of 6 watts. Jace shouted, his voice breaking, and the team erupted, cheers echoing off steel, but Elena's eyes narrowed, tracking the cracks, lattice failing, lenses buckling. The chamber hissed to a stop, the prototype scarred but alive, and she circled it, her voice low, analytical. Mega for 30 seconds, then collapse. Bonds destabilized, radiations cooking the lattice. Noah crouched by the wreckage, his fingers tracing the fractures, his grin faint but fierce. 30 seconds of Mega's a damn spark, proof it's there. We're close, Elena. She stared at him, the hope clashing with her JPL rigor, but the what-if blazed, a flame she couldn't douse, and she nodded slow. Close, too close to breaking. Stabilize the bonds, rerun with a dampened pulse. I'll rework the lens harmonics. The team dove back in, days blurring, coffee a lifeline, the lab a storm of sparks and strain. Elena's hands trembled, her vision blurred, but the flame drove her, a crack widening into a chasm she couldn't unsee. She called Sophia late, the lab dark save for the tank's glow, her voice ragged over the line. Soft, we hit megascale, 30 seconds, then it cracked. I'm chasing something real, but it's slipping. Sophia's voice crackled, tight with worry, her Pasadena hum a distant anchor. Elle, you sound gone, Mega what? Come home, crash here, you're killing yourself. Elena leaned against the tank, its hum vibrating her spine. Can't, she said, raw, breaking. It's their power I'd have laughed at. I need to hold it. Sophia sighed, soft, pained. You're his now, not yours. Don't burn out, Elle. I'm scared for you. The call faded, and Elena turned back to the tank, the prototype scars a mirror to her own, the flame a weight she couldn't shed. By week's end, they'd rebuilt, bonds stabilized, lenses tuned, and ran it again. The chamber thrummed, pressure climbing, and the array held, megascale sustained for 2 minutes, a hum that shook the room. It's stable. Noah roared, and the team cheered, fists pumping, but Elena's chest tightened, the flame flickering. 2 minutes wasn't a ship, wasn't lunar orbit. It's a start, she said, cautious, the JPL in her clawing back. We need days, weeks. Before they could revel, the door slammed open and Musk strode in, his Mars or bust mug steaming, his eyes wild with the hour. Megascale, 2 minutes, he said, voice sharp, his grin cutting through the haze. You're lighting it up, Vasquez. Told you there's a fire. She straightened, exhaustion honing her edge. A fire that dies fast, sustainability's the wall. We're nowhere near your timeline. He set the mug down, the clink loud in the quiet, his gaze piercing. Yet you're still here, why? She hesitated, the what if a knot in her throat. Because it's real, I can't unsee it. But if it's a mirage, I'll bury it. He nodded slow, stepping closer. Push the pulse, sustain the flame. I've got a board meeting. Show me a week by then, and we're golden. He left, the team buzzing, but Elena's phone buzzed. Priya Patel, her JPL tether, her voice strained. Elena, X is on fire. Singularity hits megascale, NASA defectors breakthrough. Carter's livid, says you're gone. You okay? Elena rubbed her face, the lab's shadows cold. I'm fine, Priya, pushing limits I didn't know existed. But it's cracking me too. Priya softened, urgent. Come back, Elle, JPL's your ground. Don't let him break you. The call ended and Elena stood, the tank's glow painting her blue, when a new alert hit her tablet, JPL. Europa probe funding cut, team reassigned. Her breath caught, the words a punch, her mission, her anchor, gutted while she chased Musk's ghost. She called Carter, her voice shaking, the line crackling. James, what's this? Europa's dead? His grunt was heavy, tired. Budget axe, Congress slashed us. Your team's scattered, Priya's on Mars now. You weren't here, Elena. She froze, the lab spinning, guilt clawing her chest. I didn't know I'd have fought. He sighed softer. You're fighting his war, not ours. Come back, we need you. The call died, and she sank to the floor, the prototype glinting, the flame a fracture now. SpaceX's spark costing her JPL's soul. She stood hours later, the lab silent, and called Sophia, her voice breaking. "Soph, Europa's gone, funding cut." "I wasn't there." Sophia's gasp crackled raw. "Oh God, I'm sorry. Come home, please, you're tearing apart." Elena touched the chamber, the erased scars her own. "I can't," she whispered, the flame flickering. "I'm too deep, the spark's real. But it's heavy, Soph, so heavy." The call faded, and she stared at the tank, the what if a fire and a fracture, pulling her toward an edge she couldn't escape. The SpaceX lab lay quiet in the pre-dawn gloom, its underground expanse a tomb of steel and shadow. Hollow displays dim, pressure chambers silent, the air heavy with the ghosts of solder and strain. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat slumped against the workbench, her boots scuffed, her dark hair a tangled halo, her hazel eyes hollow as she stared at the Singularity prototype in its chamber, its layered lens array glinting, scarred but alive. 10 weeks at SpaceX had hollowed her out, her life a crucible of sparks and fractures. The what if a flame that warmed and burned in equal measure. The latest test, megascale radiation sustained for 2 minutes, had lit the team ablaze, a step toward Musk's dream. But the news of Europa's funding cut had cracked her open, guilt and grief a tidal force she couldn't outrun. JPL, her anchor, was slipping, and the flame she'd chased here felt like a pyre for all she'd left behind. Her phone lay beside her, its screen dark, Sophia's last words. "Come home, Mel, you're tearing apart," echoing in the silence. She hadn't called back, couldn't face the plea. Not when the prototype's scars mirrored her own. Not when the what-if still burned. A spark she couldn't douse despite the cost. The lab door creaked, and Noah Kim stepped in, his scruffy beard catching the faint glow, his eyes bleary but sharp. "You're still here," he said, voice low, setting a coffee cup beside her, black, steaming, a peace offering. She took it, the warmth biting her palms, and nodded slow. "Couldn't leave, data's still spinning. Megascale's real, Noah, but it's fragile. 2 minutes won't cut it." He leaned against the bench, his grin faint, weathered. 2 minutes is a hell of a spark. Proof we're not chasing shadows. You're driving this, Elena, lattice, lenses, all of it. She sipped, the bitterness grounding her, her voice rough. "Driving it where?" "Lunar orbit's a pipe dream. Sustainability's the wall, and I'm breaking against it. JPL's gone. Europa's dead because I wasn't there." Noah's grin faded, his hand hovering, then dropping. "That's not on you." Congress swung the axe. "You're here, bending physics. Don't let guilt bury that." She stared at the cup, the steam curling, her chest tight. "It's not just guilt, it's me. I don't know who I am here." Before he could reply, the team filtered in, Lila Chun, her quick hands clutching a new lattice printout. Jace Reed, his quantum data glowing on a tablet. Ezra Patel and Maya Ortiz, bleary but buzzing. "Board meetings today," Lila said, voice bright, cutting the haze. "Musk wants a week of megascale, says it's make or break." Elena straightened, fatigue sharpening her edge, and nodded. "Then we push, stabilize the pulse, reinforce the bonds. Let's run it." They dove in, sims recalibrating, prototypes reshaping, the lab a storm of sparks and sweat. By noon, they'd rebuilt. Lenses tuned, lattice bolstered, and prepped the chamber, a 3-meter frame gleaming, a fragile hope against the void. The test roared, pressure slamming, radiation pulsing, sensors screaming. Elena stood rigid, her breath shallow, watching the array hold. Megascale climbing, 5 minutes, 10, the room held breath. At 12 minutes, the output stabilized, a hum that shook the steel, and the team erupted, cheers echoing, fists pumping. 12 minutes, 10 to the power of 6 sustained. Jace shouted, and Noah clapped her back hard. "You did it, Elena, sustained megascale." She stared at the numbers, her pulse racing, the flame blazing, real, solid, a bridge to Musk's madness. "It's a start," she said, cautious, the JPL in her clawing back. "We need days, lunar specs demand it." The door slammed open, and Musk strode in, his Mars or bust mug steaming, his jacket rumpled, his eyes wild with triumph. 12 minutes, megascale," he said, voice sharp, his grin cutting the air. "You're lighting the damn stars, Vasquez. Board's eating this up." She met his gaze, exhaustion honing her edge. "It's a spark, not a fire. Days, not minutes, for a platform. We're still short." He set the mug down, the clink loud, stepping closer, his voice dropping low, electric. "Short's a start. I didn't bring you here for safe. You're on the edge, push it." Board's greenlighting a lunar test, 6 months, real black hole sim. "You in?" Her breath caught, the words a hook. Lunar test, 6 months, a timeline that laughed at reason. "Real sim?" she asked, sharp, her mind racing. Radiation yields, tidal shear, a leap beyond the lab. He nodded, slow, his grin piercing. Micro-black hole, contained, staged near the moon. We've got the tech. Quantum containment's been in the works. You've got the spark. Make it a flame. The team froze, a collective inhale, and Elena's chest tightened, the what-if surging, a fire she couldn't name. That's insane, she said, blunt, her voice steady despite the storm. Containment's theoretical, failure's catastrophic. You're betting everything. Always do, he said, unfazed, his eyes locked on hers. That's why you're here, to see the shadow beyond the flame. Yes or no? She hesitated, the crack widening. JPL's loss a wound, SpaceX's spark a lifeline. I need specs, data, not promises, she said, stalling, buying ground. He smirked, tapping his phone, and her tablet pinged. Project Singularity. Lunar phase classified. Dive in, call me tonight, he said, then left the room exhaling, the team buzzing with a mix of awe and dread. She opened the file. Diagrams of a containment rig, equations for a microsingularity, timelines tighter than steel. And her mind spun. The what-if a roar now. Noah peered over her shoulder, whistling low. Micro-black hole, contained? He's nuts. She nodded, slow, her fingers tracing the data. Radiation flux, gravitational gradients. A leap that broke every rule she'd known. Nuts, and maybe brilliant, she murmured, the flame flickering, a shadow lurking beyond it. The team scattered, diving into prep, but she stayed, the lab darkening as dusk crept in, her phone buzzing, Sophia, her voice tight. X is wild. Singularity to the moon, Vasquez leads. You okay? Elena rubbed her face, the chamber glinting cold. Soph, he's pushing a lunar test, Real black hole, 6 months. I hit megascale today, 12 minutes. It's real, but it's breaking me. Sophia's gasp crackled raw. A black hole? That's God, come home, please, you're in too deep. Elena touched the glass, the erased scars her own. I can't, she whispered, the flame a fracture. It's not just a spark anymore. It's something I have to see. But it's heavy, soft, JPL's gone, and I'm carrying it. The call faded, and she called Priya, her JPL lifeline, her voice shaking. Priya, Europa's dead, and Musk's got a lunar black hole test. Megascales sustained. I'm lost here. Priya's pause was heavy, then soft. You're not lost. You're bending the universe. But JPL's bleeding. We need you back. Don't let him own you. The call died, and Elena stood, the tank's glow painting her blue, when Carter texted, Come home, Elena. Europa's gone, but we're not. Your spot's here. Guilt clawed her, the flame a pyre now, and she sank to the floor, the lunar specks glowing, a shadow beyond the spark she couldn't unsee. She called Musk at midnight, her voice firm, the lab silent. I'm in, but I need control. Specs team timeline, I run it or I walk. He chuckled, warm, sharp. Deal, lunar's yours. Light the shadow, Vasquez. The line clicked, and she stood, the what if a fire and a fracture, pulling her toward a void she'd never meant to chase, a flame casting shadows she couldn't yet name. The SpaceX lab burned with a relentless fury, its underground depths a storm of light and motion. Hollow displays blazing, pressure chambers roaring, the air thick with ozone and desperation. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at its helm, her boots scuffed, her dark hair pulled into a fraying bun, her hazel eyes sharp as she directed the Singularity team through the chaos. 11 weeks at SpaceX had forged her into something new. Her NASA rigor tempered by a fire she couldn't quench, the what if a pulse in her veins that drove her past exhaustion. The lunar test loomed, 6 months to stage a micro-black hole near the moon, a timeline that mocked reason. And Musk's revelation had handed her the reins, a deal she'd struck in the dark, control or walk. Now, the prototype spun in the hollow tank, its layered lens array glinting. Megascale sustained for 12 minutes, and she chased the shadow beyond the flame, a shape she couldn't yet name. Noah Kim stood beside her, his scruffy beard catching the tank's glow, his voice a steady thread through the din, containment rigs at 90%. Quantum field stable, lattice reinforced to 15 to the power of 10 pascals. We're hitting megascale for 20 minutes now. Elena tapped her tablet, data streaming. Field harmonics, radiation yields, stress thresholds, her frown etching deeper lines. 20's a foothold, she said, her tone crisp, unyielding. Lunar specs need hours, days, to power a platform. And the microsingularity, containment's theoretical. One slip and we're dust. Lila Chun leaned over a workbench, her quick hands tweaking a containment coil, her voice bright with defiance. Fields are holding. Sims show 99% stability. We're close, Elena. Close isn't lunar, Elena snapped, her words ablade, the tablet cool against her chest. Close is a lab trick, lunar's a leap. We need certainty, not hope. The team bristled, a quiet ripple, but Noah grinned, his optimism a spark she couldn't smother. Then let's leap, full sim, lunar orbit, max duration. Break it or make it. She nodded, the what-if surging, a fire she couldn't ground, and they prepped the chamber. A 4-meter prototype, its lenses layered and gleaming, wired to Jace's quantum tech, a fragile bridge to the void. The test roared, pressure slamming, radiation pulsing, containment fields shimmering around a simulated micro-black hole. Elena stood rooted, her breath shallow, watching the array hold, megascale climbing, 30 minutes, an hour, the room silent save for the chamber's hum. At 90 minutes, the output stabilized, a hum that shook the steel, and the team erupted, cheers echoing, fists pumping. 90 minutes, 10 to the power of 6 sustained. Jace shouted, and Noah clapped her back hard. You're bending the damn universe, Elena, lunar's in sight. She stared at the numbers, her pulse racing, the flame blazing, real, solid, a step toward the stars. It's a start, she said, cautious, the JPL in her clawing back. We need weeks, containment's the razor's edge. The door swung open, and Musk strode in, his Mars or bust mug steaming, his jacket rumpled, his eyes wild with triumph. 90 minutes, megascale, he said, voice sharp, his grin cutting the air. You're shaping the shadow, Vasquez, lunar sours. She met his gaze, exhaustion honing her edge. It's a spark, not a fire, weeks, not hours for a platform. Containment's still a gamble, 99% isn't 100%. He set the mug down, the clink loud, stepping closer, his voice low, electric. Gamble's the game. I didn't hire you for safe. Lunar's 6 months. Rigs shipping to Kennedy next week. You're running it. Light the void. Her breath caught. The words a hook. Kennedy next week. A leap that broke every rule. Shipping, she asked, sharp, her mind racing. Logistics, radiation shielding. A timeline that laughed at sanity. He nodded, slow, his grin piercing. Crates ready, containment rig, platform core, all of it. Launch windows tight, moon's waiting. You in. The team froze, a collective inhale, and Elena's chest tightened, the what-if roaring, a fire she couldn't name. That's reckless, she said, blunt, her voice steady despite the storm. Rigs untested in orbit. Failure's annihilation. You're betting the farm. Always do, he said, unfazed, his eyes locked on hers. That's why you're here, to shape the shadow. Yes or no? She hesitated, the crack widening. JPL's ghost a wound, SpaceX's flame a lifeline. I need field data. Real tests, not sims, she said, stalling, buying ground. He smirked, tapping his phone, and her tablet pinged, Singularity Lunar, field specs, Kennedy launch. Dive in, meet me at the pad in 5 days, he said, then left, the room exhaling, the team buzzing with awe and dread. She opened the file, schematics of a lunar rig, equations for a microsingularity, launch timelines tighter than steel. And her mind spun, the what if a tempest now. Noah peered over her shoulder, whistling low. Kennedy next week, real orbit? He's insane. She nodded, slow, her fingers tracing the data. Field stability, gravitational gradients, a leap beyond the lab. Insane, and maybe visionary, she murmured, the flame flickering, a shadow taking shape. The team scattered, prepping rigs, but she stayed, the lab darkening as night crept in, her phone buzzing. Sophia, her voice strained. X is screaming. Singularity to the moon, Vasquez at helm. You okay? Elena rubbed her face, the chamber glinting cold. Soph, we hit 90 minutes, Lunar's next, Kennedy in 5 days. It's real, but it's breaking me. Sophia's gasp crackled raw. 5 days? That's God, come home, you're drowning. Elena touched the glass, the array's scars her own. I can't, she whispered, the flame a fracture. It's not just a spark, it's a shadow I have to see. But it's heavy soft, JPL's gone, and I'm carrying it. The call faded, and she called Priya, her JPL lifeline, her voice shaking. Priya, Lunar's real, 90 minutes sustained, Kennedy next week. I'm lost here. Priya's pause was heavy, then soft. You're not lost, you're rewriting physics. But JPL's bleeding, Carter's begging you back. Don't let him own you. The call died, and Elena stood, the tank's glow painting her blue, when Carter texted, Elena, come home. Your spot's here always. Guilt clawed her, the flame a pyre, and she sank to the floor, the lunar specks glowing, a shadow beyond the spark she couldn't unsee. 5 days later, she stood at Kennedy Space Center, the Florida sun blazing, the launch pad a monolith of steel and ambition. The rig loomed, 10 meters tall, its containment coils glinting, the platform core sleek and scarred, a beast born of her hands. Musk met her at the gantry, his grin wide, his voice sharp. "Your baby's ready, Vasquez. Launch in 72 hours. Light the shadow." She nodded slow, her boots steady on the grate, the what-if a roar in her chest. "If it works," she said firm, "it's ours. If it fails, it's on you." He laughed, warm, sharp. "Deal, run it tight." World's watching. The team swarmed. Final checks, data streams, the air thick with jet fuel and tension. She called Sophia that night. The pads hum a backdrop, her voice breaking. "Soph, it's launching, 72 hours. I'm scared, but I'm here." Sophia's sob crackled soft. "Elle, you're my hero, don't break, okay?" The call faded, and Elena stood alone, the rig's shadow stretching long, the flame afire now, pulling her toward a void she'd shaped, a shadow she'd chased to the stars or the grave. The Kennedy Space Center launch pad stood stark against the Florida dawn, its steel skeleton glinting under a sky streaked with pink and gold, the Singularity rig towering, a 10-meter beast of coils and lenses, its platform core scarred but alive, a testament to Elena Vasquez's hands. 12 weeks at SpaceX had forged her into a blade. Her NASA past a shadow, her dark hair wild in the humid breeze, her hazel eyes burning as she stood at the gantry, the what-if a fire in her chest that had carried her here. The lunar test was hours away. 72 hours had bled into this moment, a micro-black hole to be staged in lunar orbit, a leap that defied reason. And she'd shaped it, her deal with Musk ironclad, control or walk. Now the world watched, X ablaze with Singularity launch. Vasquez's gambit, and she felt the weight of every spark she'd chased, every fracture she'd borne. Noah Kim stood beside her, his scruffy beard catching the sun, his voice steady over the pad's hum. Rigs locked, containment fields at 100%, lattice at 16 to the power of 10 pascals. We've got megascale for 90 minutes in sims, lunar sours. Elena gripped her tablet, data streaming, field stability, radiation yields, launch trajectories, her frown etching deep. "90's a start," she said, her tone crisp, unyielding. "We need days, weeks, to power a ship. Containment's the edge, one flicker, and it's over." Lila Chen adjusted a coil at the rig's base, her voice bright, defiant. "Fields are solid, 99.9% stability in orbit sims. We're ready, Elena." "Ready's not certain," Elena snapped, her words a whip, the tablet cool against her chest. "Certain gets us to the stars, ready just gets us headlines." The team bristled, a quiet ripple, but Noah grinned, his optimism a spark she couldn't douse. "Then let's make it certain. Launch it, light it, see the shadow. You've got this." She nodded, the what-if roaring, a fire she couldn't ground, and turned to the control tower, her boots steady on the grate, the rig's shadow stretching long, a beast she'd tamed, or a grave she'd dug. Musk met her at the tower door, his Mars or bust mug steaming, his jacket rumpled, his eyes wild with the moment. "Your baby's flying, Vasquez. Countdown's T-minus 4 hours. Light the void." She met his gaze, exhaustion honing her edge. "If it holds," she said firm, "it's ours. If it fails, it's yours." He laughed, warm, sharp, clapping her shoulder. "Deal, run it tight. World's yours today." He strode off, the team swarming. Final checks, data streams, the air thick with jet fuel and hope. Elena stepped into the control room, screens alive with lunar orbits, the rig's vitals pulsing, her voice cutting through the hum. "Systems green, containment on, platform primed. Let's launch." The countdown ticked, hours bleeding to minutes, tension coiling like a spring. At T-minus 10, she called Sophia, the pad's roar backdrop, her voice breaking. "Soph, it's flying 4 hours. I'm scared, but I'm here." Sophia's sob crackled, soft, fierce. "Elle, you're my damn hero. Light it up, don't break, okay?" The call faded, and Elena stood, the screens glowing, the what-if aflame now, pulling her toward the void's edge. Priya texted, "JPL's watching, Elle. Bend the stars, come home after," and Carter followed, "Your spot's here always. Good luck." Guilt stung, but the flame burned brighter, a shadow taking shape. T-0 hit, and the rocket roared. Flames licking the pad, the rig soaring, a spear into the sky. The room held its breath, screens tracking ascent. Earth's curve fading, lunar orbit nearing. At H+2 hours, the rig deployed, coils unfurling, lenses glinting, containment fields snapping on. Elena's voice rang, steady, commanding. "Ignite the Singularity now." A hum pulsed through the feed, the micro-black hole flaring, a pinpoint of darkness in lunar shadow, its event horizon shimmering. Radiation spiked, megascale sustained, the platform drinking it in, a hum that shook the room. 10 minutes, stable, Jace shouted, and the team cheered, but Elena's eyes narrowed, tracking. Fields at 99.9%, lattice holding. 20 minutes, 30, an hour. The output held days projected, the flame of fire now, a bridge to the stars. It's working, Noah whispered, and Elena's chest tightened, the shadow shaping, real, solid, a power she'd bent. At 90 minutes, a tremor hit, Fields flickering to 99.8%, lattice cracking, and her breath caught, her voice sharp. Stabilize the pulse, reroute power. The team scrambled, screens flashing, and the flicker steadied. 99.9% again, megascale roaring for 2 hours, 3 days, weeks. Lila cried, and the room erupted, cheers drowning the hum. But Elena stood rigid, the what if a roar, the shadow clear now, a future she'd forged. Musk burst in, his grin wide, his voice cutting through. You lit the damn void, Vasquez. Lunar sours, stars next. She turned, fatigue sharpening her edge. It's holding, weeks projected. But it's fragile. One slip and we're done. He nodded, slow, his eyes piercing. Fragile's a start. I told you there's a shadow beyond. You shaped it. We're next. She hesitated, the flame a lifeline, JPL's ghost a tether. I need data, sustained orbit, real flight. Then we talk stars. He smirked, clapping her back. Deal, run it. World's yours. The feed hummed, the rig orbiting, a beacon in lunar dark, and she stepped outside, the night air cool, stars glinting above the pad. Her phone buzzed, Sophia, her voice bright, tear-streaked. X is insane. Singularity levs, Vasquez conquers. You did it. Elena smiled, faint, the weight lifting. Soft, it's real, weeks of power. I'm okay, I think. Sophia laughed, soft. Come home, hero, I'm proud. The call faded, and Priya called, her voice warm. You bent the universe, JPL stunned. Come back, we need you. Elena nodded, the flame steady now. Soon, Priya, I've got one more step. She stood alone, the rigs hum a distant pulse, when Musk joined her, his mug empty, his gaze on the stars. Why'd you stay? He asked, low real. She looked up, the shadow clear, a future she'd shaped. Because the crack was real, I had to see the light beyond. It's ours now. He nodded slow, a quiet respect in his eyes. Light it further, stars are waiting. He walked off, and she stayed, the what if a fire that had burned through doubt, guilt, and fear, leaving a spark that lit the void, a flame she'd carry home. Days later, she drove to JPL, the Prius humming, her NASA badge gleaming again, the lunar feed still glowing on her tablet. Weeks sustained, a bridge to the cosmos. Carter met her at the gate, his gruff smile wide. Welcome back, Elena. Your spot's yours. What's next? She smiled, the flame steady, the shadow a star now. Stars, James, we're going. Together. The gate opened, and she stepped through, the light beyond the void hers to chase, a fire forged in the dark.